Welcome to another episode of Grief Talk, everything you want to know about grief and more. I'm your host, Vaughn Solis. As an author, life transformation coach, online instructor, and bereaved mom since 2005, I'll be bringing you great content that is informative, inspiring, and practical. Whether you have suffered a loss or other adversity, stay tuned and tapped in as I cover a variety of topics to help you get where you want to go on your journey to heal and grow. Today's guest is Linda Lang. Having survived a devastating diagnosis of cancer at age 22 with not much hope for recovery, Linda chose to transform her mind and her body through a journey of self-healing. Now, with over 35 years' experience, Linda works as an emotional alchemist, water whisperer, and gifted healer. Her transformational work merges energy medicine, intuitive guidance, and thought-changing techniques to release limiting thoughts, unresolved emotion, and move blocked energy to bring alignment, awakening, and to hone one's innate gifts. Welcome to the show, Linda. I have been so excited to talk to you. So for my audience, I just want to introduce you quickly up front to Linda Lang. We have lots to talk about today. Hello, Linda.
Hi, Vaughn. It's great to be here.
Once again, I really do thank you. I'm just going to give a quick introduction to Linda's work, further to the introduction I already provided to the audience. Linda, your website is called Thought Change, and we are all about thought change. You and I are very, very aligned in our approach to healing, our approach to self-responsibility. In other words, taking responsibility for our life circumstances, which includes our healing. You have a fascinating story to tell. And even though it occurred for you over 3 decades ago, your story, I think, resonates today and will always resonate with people struggling with a diagnosis or even moving beyond a little bit into a tragedy that is unexpected for them. And so we're all about, on this podcast, Grief Talk, everything you want to know about grief and more. Your story covers, the grief aspect of it. I'm going to let you tell it. But also the more about what we can do to help ourselves become responsible for our life situations, the good and bad experiences, which is not an easy thing to do, but it is incredibly noble and humbling. And it is really in that vein and context that I think you and I do our work, share our stories. It's not easy to share your personal experiences and that make us really vulnerable. It is to help people consider that realization for themselves and then act on it as they are called to do so. So on that note, Linda, if you could explain for my audience what happened to you at 22, and then I'm going to get into some more questions based on how your life transformed.
Yeah, absolutely, Vaughn. And I agree with you that there's so much power in sharing our stories. For many, many, many years, I didn't share my story because I didn't want to be identified with it. And my lovely spirit guides popped in and said, the story is just a story unless you share it. Then it has the power to transform lives. So I started sharing it. When I was 22, I was married. I had a young baby. I was so happy. I can remember actually saying to the universe that my life is perfect. I don't ever want it to change. And very shortly after that, I had a diagnosis of a very rare and aggressive cancer. And it just totally turned my world upside down. The prognosis was that I needed to have my leg amputated. And if I did, I had a 50% chance of living for 5 years. If I didn't, I would be dead within a year. And you can imagine, I was obviously very young. I was healthy. So I thought I didn't really drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do anything that would precipitate something like this. And there was no cancer in the family at all. So it was really out of the blue. And I started having these, I don't really know how to describe it. I'd say maybe mystical experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a visitation. I had a knowing, I had this repetitive dream not to have the surgery. And it didn't bode very well with my medical doctors, obviously. So I ended up leaving traditional medicine at that time and seeking my healing through other means, let's say. So I learned how to listen to my body, first of all, most important thing. I uh, took herbal supplements. I learned how to muscle test. I learned how to kind of tap into what was good for me and what wasn't good for me. And, here I am, right? Like 35, almost 40 years later, and I have both of my legs. I've never had, another bout of cancer.
You look fantastic. And the reason your story, and I'm so grateful you are here, and I'm so grateful you have your two beautiful legs. The reason I'm so intrigued by your story is one, there's many reasons, but one is the time frame that this happened for you. And was this in about the 80s?
Oh, yes, early 80s.
Early 80s. So back then, the courage it would have taken, the courage it takes anybody now to say, I'm going to, toss the traditional and go alternative. And we've actually had family members on my husband's side that have had cancer and died from it, some as young as 50. And it's in that last rush when you get the diagnosis that's, I'm gonna get rid of eating meat. I'm not gonna be around chemicals. They'll do anything and everything to try what usually seem to be mostly alternative therapies. And for several of them, they didn't make it. They had very severe aggressive forms of cancer. So I know all about the cancer in the family. I haven't had it on my side, and it's not in my consciousness. So touch wood, I won't ever get anything, disease-wise. But the courage it would have taken for you, Linda, back then in the time period. Second of all, your age, 22. Our brains aren't even developed till mid-20s. So you're faced with also other responsibilities. Number 3, your new baby, your new marriage. The grief associated with having to give up this perfect life, right? And then I would also think the questioning. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, how did you stay so focused to manage that fear that you must have been feeling? And what do you think at such a tender age was driving you to listen to your body, your higher, what probably was your higher self, and even I would wager being super in touch with your purpose on this planet?
Oh, those are big questions. Upon both of them are big questions.
Yeah, I know.
That first one, I would slip into fear quite a bit. I was very young and had not thought about my mortality, and I had a whole life to live that I wanted to live. So it was really challenging for sure. We lived in an area a good 6-hour drive from any family members. So we were really very isolated. Back in the early 80s, there weren't video calls. There was a telephone call and that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a real challenge. My husband, thankfully, was totally, totally amazing. And he never told me what to do.
Wow.
And even though, this is, obviously very serious, and he just trusted the decisions. They came, even though they came in fear, it was like a knowingness, Like the
Mm.
fear was on the outside, maybe, that I
Hmm.
would kind of waft back and forth through. But there was just such a knowingness, and having a visitation didn't help. It didn't help me not trust it, let's say, or to
Yeah.
maybe speak clear. It really solidified my trust that, there is a creative intelligence in the universe that is based in love, and we can tap into it.
Hmm.
So much more possible for us than our typical conscious mind is willing to imagine, even.
I agree. At the time, so um, when you look back, obviously, years and years, decades later, you've got wisdom and you can maybe see the moments. I mean, I remember when I first connected with my higher self and I saw color, and I was about 26, 27. And I wouldn't have registered it at the time. Oh, this is my higher self. But I actually even met family members in color. But I was never the same. Now, that wasn't my third eye opening, because my third eye didn't open until my daughter died in 2005. And then my third eye opened just right after that. And that was a very beautiful experience to see your eye all the time. But this first introduction to high self, I call it high self. We can call it anything, but at that moment, I'm saying I might have been connecting to that soul part of me, like I didn't understand a lot of it, but the experience absolutely transformed me energy wise. Did you then looking back? And I'm just going to ask this. You may not have an answer, or it just might be very, very unique to yourself, and I welcome that. What do you think you were connecting with in that time period? This higher, I know it's creative intelligence, but do you think it was part of your soul, your higher self? Like, did you ever form words for that?
Yeah, sort of, I guess. I had this experience one night, very shortly after being diagnosed, and I had gone to visit my sister and stay with her overnight to just try and, sometimes you have to just kind of get away from the circumstances to regroup, let's say. And so I was in bed, and she lived in the country, so it was really dark. And I remember it being so dark that I actually took my finger and put it to my nose, and I couldn't see my finger.
Okay.
I couldn't see. It was so dark. And while I was there, I prayed for strength, and I got this incredible golden orb come through the ceiling and come down and stop right in front of my face. And then it
Mm-hmm.
went up my nose cartilage into my third eye. And that's when I had my experience. And at that time, I don't know that I had words for it at that time. It was very much like not being in a body, not, it, I was me, but not my physical me. It's
Yeah.
my knowing of myself. And I was just inundated with all of this cosmic unconditional love. And it would be wave after wave, and each wave would build on the next. So it was like you would think, this is the love of the universe. Another wave would come, and there'd be more love and more love and more love. And it was just incredible. I probably at that time, I might have, I don't know, maybe thought it was God, or
Right.
like that kind of source energy. Now, when I look at that little portal is inside me. I access that through my third eye.
Yes.
That was me.
Yes. Yeah, I think that for people listening to this or watching this, I always think that there is something about ourselves, even in childhood, where we might be questioning. I was always questioning, there has to be more. Were you like that, Linda?
I didn't I didn't question things like that, but I questioned the people around me, because one of the gifts I have is being able to see patterns and be able to see consequences, let's say. And I'd be like, why are they doing that? Like would be 5 years old and think, why are they behaving like that? Because this is going to happen if they do that. I would spend hours on a swing just looking at the sky. I love the sky. It was almost like that was more home,
Yeah.
putting my feet on the ground.
I think that we all, I think you might agree with this, that we all come here with the equal opportunity to tap into our extended power. I call it personal power, extended power. But anyway, to that God consciousness, which opens the door to us in, as you know, and we're going to be talking about that as we go along here. It makes the impossible possible. And other people will say, oh, you're lucky. Oh, like, how did that happen? That never happens to me. Like those kinds of experiences over and over and over again. But when we're really living aligned with our power, and when I say that, I don't say that loosely. And I know you know that, Linda. I do believe that we're all a chip off the old block of creative source. It's all within us. It might be minuscule, and that's what gives us. This is what ignites that power. This is what fuels that power and keeps it going. And then there's all other things, free will and all of that kind of stuff that plays into it, soul contracts and so on. But I still believe that this, like, I would consider you a child, questioning that and being able to even understand consequences, pretty profound. So, well, we can't put it into words, and I'm saying this because parents, if you remember yourselves that way as a child, I should say audience or parents, have a child with those kinds of abilities, questionings, that kind of stuff. I've always looked at children as equal to us, quite frankly, and it's quite often wiser. Sometimes they're older souls, and sometimes they're way wiser, and sometimes they're really here to teach us a lot. And so I really respect children. But what I was going to say is that once it's ignited like that, and even if you have memories from a very young age, just even that questioning, that yearning. I used to look at the sky too through my bedroom window, and I'm not sure what I was looking for, but I was looking for something more. And maybe we are kind of reaching for home. Like, I don't know, like this connection, which really, we're so fortunate when we can connect to source. So the journey was ongoing for you. I do have one quick question. I did notice in your website that one thing that you said when it's about Linda is you turned to self-healing, and I'm paraphrasing, because you were finding that healers that you went to couldn't really heal you. And I think this is a significant point I wanted to jump on, because a lot of people go to healers, a lot of people go to psychics, a lot of people go to mediums. They want answers, they want to be told what to do, but they don't want to do the work themselves. So I just wanted you to, if you could explain why you didn't think, and again, at such a young age to understand this, what was it about them, and more specifically, what was it within you that you understood another person couldn't heal you?
Yeah, what a great question, really. Back in that time when I would go to see a healer, and I was very energy sensitive. So I'm actually the one who found the cancer in my body, and the doctors couldn't believe that I found it. But I just knew something was kind of not right.
Mm.
And being an energy sensitive then, I didn't feel any kind of a shift. Often when I won't say every energy person, right, that I went to, but most often I didn't feel a shift. I didn't see any signs of a shift, any manifestations of anything, any, even a healing crisis kind of reaction, nothing. And I just thought, everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
We can manipulate energy. We should be able to heal through energy.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I sense anything? And when I started to take courses, and again, I took courses really to help myself. I mean, all of my teachers said, "Oh, Linda, you're a natural at this. You really should be doing this." I had zero intent on being a healer, right?
Yeah.
Really very self-focused. And I kind of made it my mission to have people have a more tangible experience
Mm-hmm.
of an energy session. And I think times even now, right, they are a little bit different. I think it's a little easier to um, have some pretty profound changes very quickly. Back then, when we were starting, it's like the wheels were going very slowly. So it took longer. And there is also that awareness, of course, that a healer isn't actually healing you. Maybe they're pulling out some energy or removing some blockages so that your own healing processes can happen, your own innate wisdom can come through. And of course, as the sovereign person in your life, I mean, you can block that anytime you want. You can go to a healer to remove something and carry on with the same actions, the same beliefs, the same, emotional baggage if you want.
Yep.
And you'll end up with the same. It's a really, I think, healing when you work with a healer. It's a partnership. It's
Yeah.
not all their responsibility. It's maybe not 100% yours either. It's teamwork, I think.
So, again, for the audience and for people that do need help, we all need help. Listen, we all need a helping hand, and we all learn from stories. We all learn from other people's experiences. But I do agree with you, Linda, that you have to want to heal. You have to just have to be willing. A lot of my work is in just being willing. Once you are willing, the doors can just fly open for you. And of course, there are some things that are much harder to heal from. So that is again something that in my world, choosing bereavement and loss of a child, this is the greatest challenge I've taken on. Other than that, hey, I'm like, yeah, I can have the perfect life and so on and so forth. So I've been presented with other challenges that I'm going to be honest, have not exactly, despite my 40 years at this metaphysics, been easy to just accept and implement in my life. Do you believe, I'm pretty sure you're going to say yes, but do you believe that we create our own illnesses as much as we create our own experiences and stories? I'm going to say you probably believe that we create the bad just as much as the good, right?
I'm going to say yes. I will say, of course, I say yes. It's a little bit more complicated than just yes, though, because sometimes we create it with negative thinking or, negative patterns. Sometimes we're healing the lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we manifest something for our soul's evolution or for the evolution of the souls around us, for the soul growth of our family, our friends. So it's not cut and
Yeah.
dry that, oh, you had these bad thoughts,
Yeah.
you got this disease, it's your fault. It's really not about blame. For my own self, many, many, many years afterwards, my guides came in and told me that the root cause of the cancer I had was that my subconscious, if you like, my unconscious, my energy system was putting all of the resentments that I was holding on to into that leg. And that having that leg cut off would have been one way to get rid of those resentments. But I chose to actually work through and, release the judgments that I had about myself or other people or circumstances, and just to embrace really compassion and accepting, this is the way it is. This is how this person is. This is how I am. and letting that be okay instead of, jumping on that bandwagon. I learned so much so young, I tell you, Vaughn.
Yeah, yeah. I'm I did too. I started like at 25. Um, Ironically, when I was expecting my daughter and thought I was going to lose her. And then I did lose her anyway, 22 years later. But that's another point when we don't have time to talk about it today. But that is another point that is just so interesting, and I invite people to consider. Is I agree with you that things aren't cut and dry. In a very general way, I believe, yes, we create our experiences, but within that, and this is where it gets adventurous and interesting, and you got to do the work, because within that, you need to start, in my experience and view, dissecting and going deeper and deeper and deeper and looking at all the relationships and where people play in it. And if you're fortunate enough that you can open yourself up to understand soul contracts and what your relationships, past, present, future, mean, why they're in your life, why they're not in your life. And sometimes you can go to people to help you understand this through past life regression, through hypnosis, through all sorts of various techniques. But once you understand that, that's your information to shape your story differently. Would you agree with that, Linda?
Yeah, it certainly can be. It can be a door to shape your story differently. But I'd really like to encourage people to understand at any point of time, under
Yeah.
any circumstances, you can change your story without having to, do past life regression. It is fascinating to
Yeah.
know, but in
Yeah.
any moment, you can, you know, just decide to look at things differently.
Yeah. And again, thought change. That was actually going to be my next question for you. You did talk about in your website, and you've talked about how some of the crucial things you had to do on your beginning self-healing journey was to let go of old stories, emotional triggers, limiting beliefs. Very, very, and I think that, this is something that can challenge a lot of us throughout our lives, depending what happens to us and how long we keep ourselves in certain situations and fighting the course and all this kind of stuff. When you let it flow, folks, it flows, doesn't it, Linda? Life just flows. I just know for me, there's always going to be things that are teaching, that I need to learn, that are going to be teaching me, and to have as expanded a consciousness as I can by the time I die. That is my goal. Is to absolutely be as fully expanded consciously and in every other way as I can be, despite whether the body feels broken, isn't perfect and all that. It's not about the body. It's really, for me, about the mind. But to even get people just thinking about this, Linda, in terms of self-responsibility, in terms of, oh yeah, like maybe I have to do something to, change my thoughts. What would you invite them to think about? And I'm thinking about the person who's never considered this before. The people that have, I think they kind of know what to do. But for the person that might be tuning into this and going, huh? What? Change my thoughts? And I can change my experiences? Is there one thing that you could speak to them about that would just help them get on that path?
The thing that pops into my head, Vaughn, are the people that always seem to be struggling, always have issues, whether it's in their relationships, in their work, and they seem to go from struggle to struggle to struggle. And it's always, a little bit of maybe victimhood going on. It's always, well, this person did this that upset my life, and this person did this. But the common denominator is you. I'm thinking very specifically of someone who probably for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, there's always someone upsetting her feathers, let's say. And she's just recreating the same thing over and over again. Is she willing to actually change her thoughts, though? That's a very good question because we can become very addicted to our points of view. And we tend to believe our thoughts, even though they're not necessarily true. They're just one perspective of the whole thing. I guess if I had that conversation with someone, typically what I would do would be either some kind of energy thing that is totally out of their box so they could see that there's more than what they know. Or the other thing that I might do would be like to totally flip a totally different perspective. If I didn't have the sense they were open to energy, then I would flip a different point of view. And quite often when I do that, they're like, oh, they hadn't even considered of looking at the circumstance from the perspective of the other person.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. And again, I'm not sure. We're going to keep this a little bit surface today because my podcast is really about just introducing people to ideas to sort of get that noggin going and going, maybe. Because you said, Linda, we get addicted to our beliefs. I think we get addicted to our pain. I think we get addicted to our dysfunction. I think we get addicted to an awful lot of things. So it's a perfect choice of words in terms of people recreating and creating over and over and over again what they don't want to experience. I'm also just going to throw in here, and don't anyone get mad at me, but I'm going to throw in here, I think that our general tendency can be, I'm not saying it is for everyone, but I'm speaking hugely general terms here, to be lazy about themselves. They might put a lot of work into everything and everyone but themselves. And I'm not sure, it's been a question that I've pondered for decades, actually. And I've had the good fortune of having a sister who's very aligned. We're both angel healing practitioners. And so we've had tons of conversations about stuff like this. And it's like, what would it take for a person, besides their absolute lowest, and even then, not necessarily, but what would it just take for a person to become so curious about themselves and that moreness of their life, of all of our lives? And I don't have the answer. And it doesn't keep me up at night, but I'm just saying that's what I'm saying. We all have equal opportunity to push open those doors. And there's just so much more when you consider life in terms of all of that more that we can't see. We can only feel and experience it, and you certainly can't convince anybody of it. But speaking of your energy work, for sure, emotional alchemist, water whisperer, I love that, and of course a healer. Maybe I could invite you to just talk a little bit about your work, and certainly the work that you are maybe most aligned with. And what I mean by that is, you might have other things that you do, but is there an area of work that's like, this is it, I came to the planet to do this? Can you just speak about some of that, and maybe techniques, and also how you view energy as healing? Because people may not understand how does energy heal? What is that energy?
Okay, so another big question with lots of goodies in it. So we everything is made up of energy, right? Everything. Physics has shown us that. It also has shown us that it rearranges itself according to what the viewer is expecting. This is quantum physics 101 kind of experiment that the scientists did, and they were totally amazed with the wave or the particle, right? And it ended up kind of being both things. So if you consider energy as actually being intelligent, it changes your perspective of, can it be used for healing or not? The energy I work with is intelligent. I think most energy is intelligent. Maybe there's, different higher levels of spiritual energy and more physical kinds of energy. It's just such a different way of looking at life when you consider that everything is energy. Every thought, is energy. Your emotions are energy. If people started paying attention to how they physiologically responded to their thoughts or to their words or to the words of other people, they'd be able to tell if their energy opens up or closes down. Or how I always expressed is, does it give me life, or does it bring me life, or does it take life away? Does it give me energy? Does it take energy away? Maybe a good example of this would be you're talking with a friend and she's had a rough day and she just like gives you the whole scenario, and you get off that phone call and you feel like you weigh 1,000 pounds. Right? You've just taken that energy on for her, right?
Yeah.
So when we can start clearing these energy attachments that we've picked up, that we've created for ourselves, and we then open our energy up more, we have more access to our own light, to our own consciousness, to our own self-expression. There's more self-love, there's more self-acceptance. And when we can live from that place, we're giving everyone around us the permission to also love and accept themselves. So it's just a total win-win gift. So in my work, I tend to work with two different kinds of people: the kind of people that are really struggling with something emotional or recurring pattern, or something in their life isn't flowing the way they want it to be. And then the other kind of people are really the people who are on their spiritual path, and they want to evolve as much as possible. So they want to really connect with their own soul's light and their own gifts and their own purpose. And I always say it doesn't really matter why you come. It doesn't even matter what your issue is, because whatever it is, it's a doorway into yourself.
Yes. I love that. I just want to stop there just for a quick second. Whatever the issue is, it's a doorway into yourself. That is beautiful, Linda. And I did want to also ask you about water whispering, but when people, so your first type of client with emotional problem, and maybe they're not on the spiritual path yet. So would you say it's just being open to the idea like that they have a choice about this? This is how my work is, but that they have a choice about how they want to experience life. Like, I'm not sure what the very first thing is that brings people to an awareness that they can, and in fact, even want more for themselves. Because I think a lot of people shortchange themselves. And so what's the one thing they can think about? I know this is a bit loaded, but big question maybe, but what's the one thing that you would just say to them, somebody watching or listening to this, that they can, I'm not going to say they can have it all, but they can have what they believe they deserve? How do they even get to that point to consider they want more? You know what I mean? The reason I'm asking this, Linda, is because of world affairs. A lot of stuff weighs us down. And it's hard enough for those of us who are already on the path and have decades in it. And I mean, I even get waylaid a little bit. So I'm kind of actually asking this for myself too. For those of us that are feeling really, discouraged by world affairs and so on, especially if you're an empath and you feel this. So it's kind of, yeah. So how do we even start to think the world can change? In my case, that we could have peace one day. Or for that person that I could want more. Yes, Never mind even understanding deserving it, just want more.
Well, two possibilities. The first one, um, I would say that it's a wisdom, actually. The Dalai Lama has actually said it, and it is a technique in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And you can either chunk up or chunk down. And what that means is if you feel like the world is one hot mess right now, bring your awareness instead of on the big picture, bring it down to something very simple and very small, very detailed. Maybe it's the beautiful orchid that's sitting on your desk, or, this delicious cup of coffee you've made yourself, or something really inspiring for your soul that can just capture your attention for a moment and bring you very present with the beauty that is here. Okay. You can also, if your life around you is a hot mess, then you would chunk up and you can just look up to the stars at night and just know how amazing it is that you're even here, how beautiful the world is, how divinely orchestrated the cosmos is. It brings a feeling of wonder and awe, whether you go really, really big or really, really small. So that's one tip that I would suggest. The other tip for a person who's not maybe on their spiritual path yet, I might try to bring them back to memories of their childhood and how they had that sense of awe and that sense of anything being possible, because we all came here with that. It still resides in us someplace. Maybe our conscious mind has forgotten.
Yeah.
But it's there. It's there. And there are all kinds of meditations or processes to take you back there if you have a hard time remembering. One very quick little story that I'd love to share.
Yes.
Has to do with a beautiful woman. She was 82 when she came to see me. She was a church deacon. And let me tell you, going to an energy healer was like the furthest thing out of her box.
Yeah.
But here she was at my door.
Yeah.
She had been recommended by a friend of hers who was my client, and she was having trouble sleeping. She was booked for a double hip replacement, but they weren't going to be able to give her the surgeries for at least 2 years. So she couldn't sleep more than 2 hours. So she was exhausted, right? So she came. She ended up coming 4 times. Now, the hips, right? They're kind of the anchors of the pelvic girdle, right? Turns out her hips were holding really, really deep grief, because her only son, who she loved so much, he was a fireman. She was so proud of him. He drowned saving. He was saved someone who fell into a river, and their dog also was drowning. So he went back for the dog, and then he was exhausted, right? Because he'd saved this young child and went back for the dog, and he ended up drowning. And it just ripped her apart. I mean, 15 years later, if you even said his name, she would burst into tears. That's how much grief she was holding on to. And it was all stored in the hips. So she came the first time and we did some work on it. She went home and she slept for 10 hours straight, got up, had breakfast, and went back to bed for 2 hours. She came 3 more times and she never needed the hip replacements.
I totally believe it. When my daughter died, I kept an awful lot of pain in, my abdomen, obviously related to childbirth. There's a lot of pain. I went to massage therapy. They found a lot of pain in my rear end. I'm not quite sure where that was from, but and as I've said before on this podcast, I don't usually disclose stuff like that, but I will because I just understand that grief lives with pain of any kind, grief from our childhoods. And Linda, you'd know all of that with probably all the clients you've worked with and so on. We just hang on to so much pain, which is going to lead me, as we get to the top of the hour here, just a couple more questions. I wonder if you could just explain, just because I am so super curious, for the audience, what is both emotional alchemy and water whispering? Ooh, I love that.
Yes, water whispering to me is very close to magic.
Oh,
So maybe I'll start with that. I have been gifted with two energies from spirit, so they're not techniques or systems I was trained in. I have taken many, many trainings and modality um, learnings, let's say, but these two actually came from spirit. And one of them is called the diamond ray. It's a beautiful, beautiful energy. When I was first told that I carried it, I started working with it on myself first because I didn't want to, hurt anybody. I didn't know anything, right? So I was
mm-hmm.
practicing on myself. And then when I started practicing on clients, I mean, they were like, don't do anything else. We just want this because it's just so quick
Mm-hmm.
and so peaceful. About 6 months after I started working with people, then I heard this voice, why don't you remolecularize water? And I just stopped dead in my tracks. It was in my kitchen. I'm like, who said that? And there's no such word. I don't know how to do that. I went over to the counter, poured myself a glass of water, and did it. So, I mean, I've had so many people say, oh, you have to teach how to do it. I don't know how to teach how to do it because I know how I access the energy because it runs through me. But if it doesn't run through you, it's not like there's a symbol that you could call it. So maybe someday, if I'm supposed to do that, then spirit will pave the way. But for now, one of the ways I use that energy is to structure your water, your coffee, your tea, your bowl of soup. My guides tell me that's the most effective way of getting the energy into the physical body. Like if you channel energy, it's got to go through all the layers of your energy
Yeah.
body to get to the physical. So
Yeah.
typically I'll do the water so they can get it on the inside
Yeah.
and also channel it so they get it on the outside. So it kind of meets in between. And the crazy thing is that your beverage tastes different. It has a different texture. It works on the replay of a video. Done a couple in Australia where we did a jug and they poured two glasses from the same jug and they could tell which water was theirs and which one wasn't.
Wow.
So how intelligent is that, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it really is like magic. So I've had so many reports from physical things like headaches being taken away or chlorine taste taken away to past life healings and all kinds of stuff. So it is great fun. And I mean, to me, it's magic. And I don't feel, yes, I'm carrying this energy and I'm aligned with this energy, but it's not, oh, great Linda who can do this. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, am I ever blessed that this magic has come to me that I can share it with people, right?
And you have more information about water whispering on your site, do you?
Yes, I do. When I asked them what to call it, they called it the living waters.
The living waters. Ooh.
Uh, I have some water healings on YouTube if anyone wants to try it. You don't taste a difference with your water because people have different sensitivities, right? Then
Yeah.
come with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea because it takes the bitterness away and it's just delicious.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I'm sold to look into that. The Living Waters.
At the bottom of the homepage, there's a YouTube link.
I'll take a look at that. That's so fantastic. And when you're dealing with emotional alchemy, Linda, I don't know if that's the bulk of your work that you do or a good part of the work that you do. And it's so key, as you were saying a little earlier, emotions are energy, just like everything. We talked a little bit about that a while back about everything is energy. Yes, quantum physics has proven that. And if you don't believe it, go touch a light socket. Just kidding. We are energy. You'll know that from static, depending on, I guess, my own vibrational level. I can be shocked. I used to live in a log house and I was shocked all the time in switches and stuff. It got to the point where I was almost afraid to touch the light switches. But it was also possibly, how I was growing consciously at the time too. And I was working regularly channeling angels. So you could say that I was filled with a lot of energy at that point. So when we talk about emotional alchemy, and I actually don't know if I've heard that expression, that term with anybody else other than you, Linda, which makes you very special. But what's actually happening when someone is going through emotional alchemy?
So that's actually another term that my guides gave me, and I love it. I really do love it. If you think of an alchemist, traditionally as someone who turns lead into gold. So
Yes.
an emotional alchemist will turn those kind of dark, heavy, restrictive emotions and bring them into the light. To find the gold within it, to switch your vibration from being very low to being much more open and expansive. And as you spend more time in that open, expansive place, you recreate your life in such very different ways.
Yeah, this is the point. So it's kind of like, just sort of paraphrasing, being willing to put yourself in a vulnerable space, to open up, not know what really is going to happen, and almost allow yourself to become a channel, a vessel for whatever you're going to experience is healing. We all need healing. We're all here to evolve. I believe that with all my heart, that we have come to this planet, even if we're evolving, and I'm speaking in general terms, through actions of darkness. So those people taking part in things that are very dark in this world, I do believe in the forces of dark and light. I don't work enough in it and dabble. I don't dabble it in it all, but enough to understand that temptation can be there. And when I became an angel healing practitioner, I actually trained with Doreen Virtue back in 2006, certified with her. And, it was like, surround yourself with the light. And so for many years I had to, because I was so vulnerable in my pain, and pain makes us really vulnerable people. Even if we're carrying pain from childhood, from a past relationship, from just being lost, from whatever, there isn't one of us that is going to escape pain on this planet. And when you start getting into energy work and opening yourself up, and you kind of have to do it, right, Linda? It's kind of a double-edged sword. You have to do it to expand, but at the same time, you can make yourself vulnerable to some not very pleasant forces. And I was taught just to surround yourself with light. Just surround yourself with light. And I did have some dark energies try and get in. They really did. And it was very scary. But I just kept the light around me. And if you do that, that's one technique. I don't know if, Linda, you practice that or have other techniques to ward yourself, like guard yourself. I don't know what the word is, but protect yourself for people when they start opening up, because it can be really scary. I remember being scared, Linda. When I invited the angels into my life in 2005, and I actually even did a little bit of automatic writing, kind of to test them. And it was true automatic writing, where I lost control of my hand, my pen, and didn't even know it was just squiggles. But that wasn't the point. The point was that was the moment that I knew. I absolutely 100% knew the angels were with me. Another energy form, if you will. And when we do that, would you not agree, Linda, that we are opening ourselves up to being our most vulnerable for our most growth and expansion. It's the best way I can sort of say it.
Well, that word vulnerable really scares a lot of people.
I know.
It really does. It's almost like a cosmic joke when you think about it, that you find your power through vulnerability. But even
Yes.
in this 3D life, I mean, the people that can be really real and therefore vulnerable, really authentic, they're the ones that find their power
Yes.
rather than a persona of power that they
Yes.
are trying to step into, right?
Yeah, and we all have that, and that's it all works together. So, Linda, I just wanted to wrap this up. This has been wonderful, and we could have gone on and on about a lot of different things, but it was just enough to give us a look into what you do. And here are some terms like water whispering and emotional alchemy that people may not have heard of. And I just love it. And your website is fantastic and filled with resources. And I'll have that link down below. And so I just want to invite people to check your website out. You are working with clients. Do you take new clients today still?
When I have space for them, absolutely. I would encourage anyone to reach out and see if there is a space and see if we're a good fit. It's really important, I think, might be one of the most important things when you do your healing work, is to have rapport with the person that you are doing your healing work.
Yes.
It's maybe not so much about what technique as how much you trust that person and how much aligned you are, really.
Yeah, that's really a good point. You have some resources there as well, though, that I'm not sure if people can download them and what these resources are as products. What are those?
I give a free book on my website called Learning to Listen. I think there's 8 tips that you can start paying attention to your inner guidance system, which is always working, right? It's always trying to communicate with you, and we just aren't paying attention to it. But if you can learn how to master your inner guidance system, your path will definitely be easier. I have another gift, which I don't think is on my website, but I'm happy to provide a link for it. It's called 7 Signs that You're Out of Alignment.
Oh,
Sometimes we think we're in alignment and we're not.
I'll also include that link in the description. That would be enough of a start to even for those people, again, that are maybe a little doubtful of their own abilities, maybe even doubting some of what we've talked about today. Our goal is not to change people's minds. Our goal is to invite people to consider more for their life. So, is there anything else, Linda, that I may not have asked you that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, Vaughn, I would love to invite the listeners to check out my podcast, which is called Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. If you're interested in metaphysics or spirituality, mysticism, and alternative healing, I have some pretty interesting guests on there, and I invite you to check it out.
Yes, I apologize. I meant to actually mention that, and it slipped my mind. I have listened to some of your episodes. You have an amazing podcast. So again, for folks, it's the Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. I'll put a link to that down there as well, Linda, and but they can also find podcast episodes on your website because I checked them out. It's wonderfully done, wonderfully done. So thank you so much, Linda, for being here. This is a wonderful conversation, and of course, there's so much more we can dive into at a much deeper level when we talk about many things spiritual and mystical, but that's for another day. And I do thank you again for sharing what you do, your wonderful gifts, your story. Let's not forget about your story. The whole point and of this that got Linda on her path was a very, very troubling, horrible cancer diagnosis at the young age of 22. And Linda took it upon herself to reject that. We are not telling people to reject traditional medicine, nothing like that. But it was Linda's path to do so and carve out a life for herself where she's a vibrant, beautiful, fully healed woman, and has been for many years, and shares that wisdom and healing with others. And that in itself, I would say, is almost a mystical miracle, Linda. I thank you very much for being here.
It really fun, my honor to share this time with you and your audience. Really my pleasure.
Okay, we shall talk again, and so thanks again, Linda.